Y'all, when I tell you this shit right here broke my heart. I don't even know how addicts get girlfriends unless they addicts too. Because it take a special kind of non-addict to deal with the behavior of an addict. And if your baby father is an addict, God bless you. Oh, my life, my life, be waiting for you. No, how you do. Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, Bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and tip your favorite narrator via Cash App at $Nabob on YouTube. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button right there here on the YouTube, and for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, baby, the Hines brothers. Now, let's continue reading Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again by Sly Stone. Baby, anyway, I thought I was going to be done with this book before the end of the month, but it seems like I'm going to be done at the end of the month. You know, I wanted to start a new book before the month ended, but it don't look like that's going to happen. We'll start the new book in March. Getting high and making music pushed time forward, but there were some moments that stood out sharply. Late in the year, Epic dropped me. I had been there more than 10 years. It was more than a second home. It was a first home. Millions of records had been sold, but the recent albums had fallen off, and fewer true believers remained at the label. I went looking for another home. Warner Brothers came in with a strong offer, and Ken Roberts recommended giving it a serious look. I wanted to stay with people who knew me. After Clive Davis had left Columbia, he had founded Earthstar Records. Sly slithered his ass over there to Diablo and said, "Hey, Clive Diablo Davis, you got room for me over here?" Clive said, "I'll look into it," and ain't never look back. After Clive Davis had left Columbia, he had founded Earthstar Records. Clive and I met at the Beverly Hills Hotel. We had a long meeting and a good one. I told him I had songs already written and that they added up to most of a record. He listened to me carefully and listened to some of the songs. Clive was never less than careful, but he didn't bring me over to Earthstar. I couldn't even say that he wouldn't want that trouble because he's had difficult people before. We got back to Warner, accepted their offer, and completed the record. Freddie, Rose, and Cynthia were on some tracks. Pat Rizzo was back. Joe Baker from the Chocolate Chips was back. I borrowed some musicians from Billy Preston to round out the group and brought on my niece, Lisa, Rose's daughter, as a vocalist. When I delivered the record, Warner assigned it to a guy named Mark Davis, who had worked with bands like Rolls Royce and Stargard. Oh! Had a little trouble in my hometown. Ay. Things were getting funky, so I had to leave right away. So I went to the city on the first thing smoking. 'Cause trouble had a way of finding me, and I ain't lying. When I delivered the record, Warner assigned it to a guy named Mark Davis, who had worked with bands like Rolls Royce and Stargard. He was entrusted with final production. Mark was moving up at the label and could sometimes have a high opinion of himself. But he wasn't the whole problem. The problem was the idea that it was a problem for me to produce the record myself. I had always done it on my biggest hits. Why not now? The album came out, back on the right track. The cover photo was of me in a brown vest. I had a new and improved smile of new and improved teeth. And the whole album went with that same angle. When Warner pushed the album out, Epic pushed back. A month after Back on Track, they released a record called 10 Years Too Soon, which had disco versions of old hits. Remixes designed for the dance floor. Disco was bigger than ever that year, which took some of the air out of the sales of the new record. Again, the year ended, and again, the decade. Around Christmas, I was driving to see Sylvester. I had thousands of dollars with me to buy him whatever presents he wanted. Cowboy shit. Anything. Y'all, when I tell you this shit right here broke my heart. I don't even know how addicts get girlfriends unless they addicts too. Because it take a special kind of non-addict to deal with the behavior of an addict. And if your baby father is an addict, God bless you. So any rate, he's taking the ride to go visit Sylvester Jr. with thousands of dollars in his pockets. Baby, but on the way, he has every drug dealer mapped out from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm not saying that that was where he was going. What I'm saying is that there were dots on the maps, because this is before navigation or GPS, or if you guys are even old enough to know, TomTom. Okay. Honey, he stopped at every drug dealer and connected with them. That shit is sad. And by the time he got to his son, he was broke. That's how bad your addiction got you. I feel sorry for anybody who is married to an addict and they're a non-addict, and or has children with an addict and is a non-addict. Okay, that broke my heart. By the time I got there, it was all gone. I felt terrible, but I was straight with him. Tell the truth to the youth. Man, I said, I have nothing left for you. I spent it on dope. He wasn't mad. And if he was sad, he hid it. He just looked at me clear-eyed and told me he would get it the next year. I was at home with drugs. I was comfortable with them. But I also mean that one day I was in my house with them. Home base, free base. When you light up, you have to be careful of the fire and the ether. And that day, I was not careful of ether. There was a loud noise. I knew it in my mind, and then I heard it outside my mind. The bathroom blew up completely. Sly, Sly, Sly. I turned around at the third one. I was in New York for a party at someone's apartment, and George Clinton was there too. I hadn't seen George for a little while, since we had toured. Parliament had put out some bigger albums, and then Funkadelic had. And George had started 1,000 offshoot bands too. But he was starting to burn out from juggling it all. Acts, labels, tours, money, drugs. We talked for a long time at the party, more than we had talked before. He told me that he was heading up to his farm in Michigan, about an hour from Detroit, and that I could visit any time. Maybe I will, I said. I did. Country living was clean air and a lack of distraction. We went fishing, made music, and got high. Not always in that order. George was a trip. I always thought of him as a human cartoon. If there was a way to make any experience more fun, he would find it. He was funny on his own, and together we were even funnier. If I wanted money to score, I didn't have to lie and say that I was buying equipment or giving a girlfriend money for clothes. I would just come right out and ask, "Can I star?" But in this case, the headliner got attention first. Sometimes George and I went to Detroit. Sometimes we went to New York or Los Angeles. Even though George and I used together, we didn't use in similar ways. He would go to sleep early and I would stay up later. He would stop and I was just getting started. Sometimes after he was in bed, I needed more drugs. I would write dope notes and slide them under his door. There was one he liked to bring up. Knock, knock. Put a rock in a sock and send it over to me, doc. Signed a cold junkie for the funk. By now, the drugs were in rock form, made with baking soda and called crack because of the crackling noise it made when it was heated up. One night, George and I drove to meet a dealer in a parking lot next to a restaurant at Denny's or a Howard Johnson. I think I remember this story from reading George Clinton's book. That was right around the time that Richard Pryor burned himself up with the freebase. When I heard about it, I worried about him, for sure. I might have even worried about him while we waited for the dealer. Finally, he showed up. We cooked and got down to business. Someone in the restaurant had been watching the whole time. It was obvious what was happening even before the car filled with smoke. As we drove out of the lot, the cops were waiting for us. When we rolled down the window, the cop looked straight at us. "Sly," he said to me, and to George, "Dr. Funkenstein." He touched a finger to the brim of his hat. In the trunk, they found a broken piece of pipe and brought us in with that, though they only kept us overnight. Anytime we met a dealer who was a big fan of mine, he knew every song from every Family Stone record. Even a whole new thing. We had to wait for the drugs while he asked detailed questions. I hung with George's group. Bootsy Collins and I connected especially well. He had taken my style and kept going with it. The suits, the hats, the rhinestones, the glasses. He was the chief cartoon in those days and a solo star still rising. Sometimes when I was out walking, people would call to me, "Bootsy, Bootsy." I didn't mind it so much. I must agree, when I was a child, I didn't know the difference. I really thought that they was the same person. And now that I'm reading this part of the book, now I understand why I thought they were the same person. Because they basically had the same style, or at least Bootsy stole Sly's style. And like he said, kept going with it. During that time, George was being courted by Capitol as a solo artist. I remember riding in a limo with him and a Capitol A&R guy who kept saying how great everyone was. George, me, all of us, right to our faces. We were geniuses, legends, the best in every way. I could take some of that, but not too much. I closed my eyes and leaned against the inside of the car door. If the A&R guy thought I was nodding out, he would stop talking to me. But he didn't stop talking in general. When he finally got out of the car, I told George I thought that he was the emptiest suit mother hunchy I had ever met. George signed with Capitol anyway and had a huge hit with Atomic Dog, which doesn't disprove a thing about the suit. I went back on the road with the P-Funk and a bunch of funk acts. Bootsy, Roger Troutman and Zapp, Bernie Worrell, Junie Morrison, Maceo Parker, me. Sometimes I had a short set of my own. The tour was so crowded that it was sometimes a fight for the spotlight. One night, Roger said something that hit Bootsy sideways, and Bootsy took off for the hotel. About a half hour before he was scheduled to go on stage, he still wasn't back.